13 ships against over 300. By every law of war, this was not a battle, it was an execution. And yet, it didn't end that way. On a narrow, storm-tossed strait off the southwestern coast of Korea, in October of 1597, a disgraced admiral stood on the deck of his flagship, facing the greatest naval power in East Asia, with barely a handful of ships at his back. His name was Yi Sun-sin, and what happened next would become one of the most astonishing upsets in naval history. To understand how we end up at the Battle of Myeongnyang, how one man and 13 ships stand between a nation and annihilation, we need to step back. Back to the late 16th century. Back to a peninsula caught between empires. The year is 1592. Japan is ruled by Toyotomi Hideyoshi, the great unifier. After decades of civil war, he's finally brought the daimyo, the powerful feudal lords, under his control. But peace at home has created a new problem. A warrior class bred for battle, with no battles left to fight. Hideyoshi looks across the sea. To the west, the Korean peninsula, ruled by the Joseon dynasty. Beyond that, Ming China, the giant of East Asia. His dream is audacious, perhaps delusional. Conquer Korea. March through Korea into China. Build a Japanese empire across the continent. To do that, he needs one thing above all: supply. Food for his armies, weapons, reinforcements, and constant lines of communication across the sea. If his ships can keep moving men and material from Japan to Korea, then Joseon, and maybe even the Ming, are in grave danger. If those sea lanes are cut, the invasion rots from the inside. And this is where Admiral Yi Sun-sin steps onto the stage. Yi isn't born into glory. He's the son of a modest aristocratic family, a minor Yangban clan. As a young man, he fails his first military exam when he falls off his horse and breaks a leg. That could have been the end of his story, a footnote in a bureaucratic file. But he tries again. He studies tactics, archery, the Confucian classics. He gains a reputation not for flashy brilliance, but for discipline, intelligence, and unshakable integrity. In a Joseon court riddled with corruption and factions, that last quality does not make him popular. In time, Yi is appointed to command the left naval district of Jeolla province. A quiet backwater, or so it seems. He drills his sailors relentlessly. He personally inspects ships, supplies, and weapons. He pushes local shipwrights to refine a very particular kind of warship, the Panoxion, a broad, heavy, oar and sail-powered vessel with a high fortified deck. Unlike many Japanese ships, which favor boarding actions, the Panoxion is designed as a gun platform, stable in coastal waters, ideal for cannons and archers. He also helps refine something more famous, the Geobuxion, or turtle ship. Low and squat, armored with a spiked roof to prevent boarding, bristling with cannons from all sides, and a fearsome dragon's head on the bow that could emit smoke to obscure movement. Half weapon, half psychological warfare. To many Joseon officials, all this preparedness looks like overkill. To Yi, it looks like prudence. Because over in Japan, Hideyoshi is writing letters, demanding that Joseon open the road to China or be swept aside. Joseon's court responds with denial, hesitation, and wishful thinking. Yi responds with gunpowder and discipline. When the Japanese invasion finally comes in 1592, it is like a thunderclap. Japanese troops land at Busan with superior firearms, battle-hardened samurai, and excellent battlefield coordination. The Koreans, unprepared on land, falter. Cities fall. Seoul is captured. The king, Seonjo, flees north toward the Chinese border. On land, it feels like the collapse of a kingdom. But at sea, something else is happening. Yi's fleet moves. He doesn't rush into battle blindly. He scouts Japanese movements, chooses favorable waters, and strikes their transport ships rather than their warships when he can. He understands the basic logic of the war. Japan's armies in Korea are powerful, but also stranded, utterly dependent on the flow of reinforcements from across the strait. Cut that lifeline, and those armies will wither. Through a series of battles, Okpo, Happo, Sacheon, and many more, Yi's fleets ambush Japanese convoys, burn anchored transports, and sink ship after ship. At the Battle of Hansundo in 1592, he lures a large Japanese fleet into open waters and executes his famous crane wing formation, enveloping them in a deadly crescent of cannon fire. The result is devastating. Japanese naval power in Korean waters is broken. Their army can still advance, but its lifeline is fraying. The war drags on in stalemate. Ming China intervenes to support Joseon. The Japanese suffer more defeats on land. Hideyoshi is furious. He needs to get rid of Yi Sun-sin. And ironically, he gets help from Yi's own side. Back in the Joseon court, Yi has made enemies. His success eclipses other commanders. His honesty wins him no favors among officials who profit from corruption. And above all, he belongs to the wrong political faction. In a court consumed by factionalism, with rival cliques constantly vying for influence. Then, an opportunity arises. A Japanese double agent feeds Joseon officials false information. A chance, supposedly, to ambush a key Japanese commander. Yi looks at the report and refuses. The waters suggested for the ambush are treacherous. The intelligence is suspicious. Moving the fleet there would be reckless. He will not throw away his men on a maybe. For a king desperate for good news, this sounds less like prudence and more like disobedience. Manipulated by jealous officials, King Seonjo makes a catastrophic decision. Yi Sun-sin is removed from command. He is arrested, tortured, and sentenced to death. Think about that for a moment. The one figure standing between Joseon and total naval collapse is stripped of rank and subjected to the lash. His body is broken, his reputation is dragged through the mud. Only at the last moment is he spared execution, condemned instead to live as a common soldier on the front lines. In his place, a new admiral is appointed, Won-gyun. Won-gyun is brave but reckless. He has neither Yi's discipline nor his strategic mind, but he does have one quality the court apparently values. He is willing to say yes to their demands. Where Yi refused a dubious mission, Won-gyun accepts. And that brings us to the year 1597. Japan invades again. The first campaign had stalled. Peace talks collapsed. Hideyoshi decides to try once more. Massive fleets set sail. Troops land again on Korean shores. The war, known as the Imjin War in Korea, enters its second, bloodier phase. This time, Hideyoshi has learned one key lesson: secure the sea lanes. Japanese admirals bring up hundreds of ships. Their aim is simple: destroy the Joseon Navy once and for all. Won-gyun obliges them. Against all prudence, he sails the bulk of the Korean fleet south toward Busan and into a trap. The Japanese pounce near the island of Chilcheollyang. What follows is not a battle, it is a massacre. In the chaos, discipline breaks. Most of the Joseon fleet is annihilated. Ships burn and sink. Men drown or are cut down. Panoxion hulls split under concentrated attack. When the smoke clears, almost the entire navy that Yi had spent years building is gone. Of the once proud fleet, around 150 or more vessels, only a scattering survive. Some flee north, others are grounded or abandoned. Among the dead is Admiral Won-gyun himself. In the aftermath, the Korean court receives the news like a death sentence. With the Navy destroyed, the Japanese sea lanes are open. Reinforcements can flow freely. The road to the capital and beyond lies exposed. Panic ripples through the government, and somewhere on the front lines, a limping common soldier named Yi Sun-sin is told to report to the king. Imagine the scene. Yi stands in court, body still bearing the scars of torture from this very king's earlier order. He has been humiliated, demoted, broken. And now, Joseon is back on the brink. This time, closer than ever before. The king speaks what must have felt like both an apology and an impossible demand. There is no other who can command the navy. Only you can save this country. Yi is reinstated as admiral. But restore the title as much as you like, you cannot conjure ships from thin air. Yi travels south to see what remains of his fleet, and for a man known for his self-control, even he is shaken. He finds just 12 operational warships. 12. Accounts differ slightly. Some say he later recovers or repairs one more, making 13. But the point remains, of an entire navy, he has barely more than a dozen panoxion, manned by exhausted, demoralized sailors. No turtle ships remain. They've all been lost at Chilcheollyang. Across the water, Japanese admirals command a fleet some scholars estimated well over 130 warships, plus hundreds of transports and auxiliary vessels. In popular memory, the number swells to 300. Whatever the precise figure, it is not a contest. This is a nightmare scenario. Yi writes in his war diary, the Nanjung Ilgi, "We have only 12 ships, but I am still alive, and the enemy will never be safe in the West Sea." He understands something crucial. As long as even a few ships remain, the Navy is not dead. And as long as the Japanese cannot move freely along the western coast, they cannot fully exploit their advantage on land. To the court, however, the picture looks hopeless. Some officials urge Yi to scuttle the remaining ships and retreat entirely. Yi refuses. "If we fight, we might die. If we do not fight, we will surely die." He chooses the narrow path between annihilation and surrender. He chooses to fight. The question is, where? Yi studies the map. If you cannot match numbers with numbers, you must match them with conditions. A tiny fleet cannot hope to defeat a great armada in open waters. It must fight in places where numbers are blunted, where local knowledge matters, where the very shape of the sea is a weapon. And on the southwestern tip of the Korean peninsula, Yi finds such a place. A narrow strait called Myeongnyang. On the map, it looks unremarkable, a bottleneck of water between the mainland and Jindo Island. But to local fishermen and pilots, it is infamous. The tides at Myeongnyang are ferocious. Twice a day, the sea seems to change its mind, reversing direction with terrifying force. Currents can reach speeds of up to 10 knots or more. The surface boils and churns with whirlpools, eddies, and standing waves. To unprepared sailors, these waters are lethal. To Yi Sun-sin, they are an opportunity. He surveys the strait carefully. He notes the timing of the tides. He measures the width, barely wide enough for a few ships abreast. He sees high forested hills on either shore, perfect for concealment, signals, and drums. Here, in this narrow throat, the massive Japanese fleet cannot bring its full strength to bear. Here, cannons on stable panoxion decks can pound enemies forced to approach in a line, struggling against or with the tide. Here, 13 ships might hold against 100. It is a desperate plan. It is also the only one he has. Yi orders his tiny fleet to Myeongnyang. As they arrive, fear hangs over the men like fog. These sailors remember Hansando, a triumphant victory. They also remember Chilcheollyang. Now, their new, and yet old, admiral is asking them to stand in the path of an oncoming storm with almost nothing at their backs. Rumors ripple through the ranks. Some say the court has abandoned them. Others whisper the king might flee again. If the navy is destroyed here, there will be nothing between the Japanese and the heart of what remains of Joseon. Sensing their fear, Yi takes action. He does not give them a speech about glory. He gives them a threat. On shore, he erects a war drum and a flag. He announces that any ship attempting to retreat without orders will be sunk immediately, its officers executed. The message is harsh, but clear. There is no way out but forward, but that is not all. Yi also understands that bravery cannot be beaten into men alone. It must be inspired. As the Japanese fleet begins its northward movement, as sails and banners appear on the southern horizon, Yi orders his flagship, the biggest, most powerful ship he has, to sail ahead of his line. He will not hide in the center, he will stand in the front. In his diary, he will later write, "I placed my flagship at the front so that I would die first in battle rather than retreat a single step." He is telling his men, "If you are to risk your lives today, I will risk mine before any of you." It has an effect. Fear does not vanish. But something else mixes with it. A grim, stubborn determination. If death waits, they will meet it together. Across the water, the Japanese fleet closes in. Smoke curls from their galleys. Banners with clan crests ripple in the wind. Drums beat out commands. From their perspective, this is a mop-up operation. The Joseon Navy is already destroyed. 13 ships are an annoyance, not a threat. They have no idea what waits in the strait. They advance. When the first Japanese ships approach Myeongnyang, the tide is flowing northward, in their favor. The current helps push them into the narrows. Their oars bite water with less strain. They surge forward more quickly than expected. Yi sees this and does nothing. He holds fire. His ships drift and wait, anchored in the narrowest part of the channel. Japanese captains, emboldened, spur their helmsmen on. The first ranks plunge into the strait, their hulls cutting through the churning water. More follow behind, each ship funneling into the same deadly corridor. The strait fills with ships, and then the sea changes its mind. The tide turns. This is the moment Yi has been waiting for. The northward flow slackens, pauses, and then, with gathering strength, reverses. Now, the water rushes southward, back toward the open sea. For the Japanese ships surging into the channel, the effect is immediate and devastating. Their forward momentum falters. Ships slow, then grind almost to a halt, struggling to make headway against the sudden opposing current. Those in the lead find themselves pushed backward. Those behind keep coming, carried forward by inertia and the still transitioning flow. They begin to bunch up. Oars clash, hulls scrape. Signals are lost in the chaos of the roaring tide. Commanders shout conflicting orders. Some ships swing sideways, presenting their flanks. The great Japanese fleet finds itself packed tightly into a narrow killing zone. Half stranded, half rushing, none in proper formation. Now, Yi gives the order. The Panoxion open fire. Roars of cannon echo through the strait, bouncing off cliffs and hills. Columns of smoke burst from the sides of Yi's ships. Heavy iron cannonballs tear into wooden hulls. Splinters explode outwards like shrapnel. Men are hurled into the sea. Joseon archers loose volleys of arrows from the high decks, aiming for officers and exposed crews. The Japanese attempt to respond. Traditionally, Japanese naval tactics favor closing with the enemy, grappling and boarding, turning sea battles into something closer to land skirmishes, where samurai excel at sword and spear. But here, in the maelstrom of Myeongyang's currents, closing the distance is easier said than done. Ships that try to row forward find themselves thrown off course by eddies. Others, pushed from behind by the press of the fleet, ram unwillingly into their neighbors. A compact, disciplined boarding action dissolves into chaos. Yi's flagship surges ahead, directly into the thick of it. For a terrifying moment, he is surrounded. Japanese ships close on either side, attempting to grapple. Marines and samurai prepare to leap onto his decks. This is where battles can pivot, where the loss of a commander's ship breaks morale as surely as the loss of a dozen ordinary vessels. On board, Yi remains calm. He orders every cannon to focus on the nearest threats. Korean gunners aim at waterlines, anchor points, and crowded decks. A single well-placed shot can disable a ship, spin it sideways, and turn it into an obstacle for its allies. As some Japanese vessels are smashed or set ablaze, they drift, not away, but into the paths of other oncoming ships. The strait becomes a tangle of wrecks, burning hulks, and colliding hulls, all under constant cannon fire. On the high ground above the channel, local militias and Buddhist monks who have taken up arms watch and pray. Some accounts say they beat drums and shouted to amplify the fearsome impression of the Joseon fleet's power. Down below, amidst the thunder of guns and screams of the wounded, something shifts in the minds of Yi's sailors. They expected to die. Instead, they see Japanese ships sinking. They see enemy flags toppling, masts splintering. They see their admiral's ship in the very thick of it, battered yet still fighting. Fear begins to give way to something extraordinary. Confidence. One by one, the other Joseon captains shed their hesitation. Ships that had hung back now row forward, joining their admiral. They maneuver within the currents they know so well, using eddies to swing their broadsides into better position. They avoid the worst of the whirlpools, while Japanese ships blunder into invisible hazards. Every 30 minutes, the tide grows stronger, pushing more and more Japanese ships backward, away from the fight, into the disordered mass still trying to enter the strait. In that chaos, numerical advantage becomes a curse. Rear ships can't see the flagship's signals. Front ships can't retreat without being rammed from behind. Some Japanese commanders, realizing the danger, try to withdraw and regroup. But Myeongnyang is not a place where withdraw is a simple order. Currents seize ships indiscriminately. Those that turn sideways risk capsizing or being smashed by their neighbors. Others, damaged by cannon fire, take on water and sink quickly in the fast-moving tide. The battle rages on for hours. Yi's ships hold their line. They do not need to pursue. They only need to stand, like a wall of wood and iron across the throat of the sea, and let the enemy come to them, over and over again. By the time the Japanese fleet finally manages to extricate itself and retreat southward, the results are staggering. According to Korean records, around 30 Japanese warships are sunk or disabled. Yi's losses? Not a single ship. Some of these figures are debated by historians, but even the most conservative estimates agree. 13 Korean ships, 13 Japanese ships in perhaps the worst strategic situation imaginable, have just bloodied and turned back a massive Japanese fleet. The Strait of Myeongnyang is littered with debris, corpses, and wrecks, but it is still in Joseon hands. Why does this matter? In purely tactical terms, it's a miracle of seamanship and nerve, but its true impact goes far beyond the number of ships sunk. The Battle of Myeongnyang stops the Japanese fleet from sweeping up Korea's western coast, raiding supply centers and cutting off the land routes that Joseon and Ming forces depend on. It preserves a naval presence that can continue to harass Japanese logistics. It shatters the momentum and the aura of invincibility that Japan might have gained following the destruction of the Joseon Navy at Chilcheollyang. More importantly, it sends a message to both friend and foe. Joseon is not finished. To a people exhausted by years of war, famine, and occupation, that message is worth more than gunpowder. Here is one man, once disgraced and broken, who has refused to accept inevitable defeat. And through skill, courage, and careful study of the sea itself, has turned despair into defiance. The news spreads. In the royal court, some of the very officials who had moved against Yi now quietly reposition themselves, suddenly eager to be associated with the hero of Myeongnyang. Among common people, songs and stories begin to grow. They speak of an admiral who faced hundreds with 13 ships, of a man who learned to read the tides like scripture, of an officer who slept in his armor on the deck, who wrote poetry in moments of calm and waited for the sea to turn in his favor. Myeongnyang does not end the war. Fighting will continue. The following year, in 1598, the final great naval clash of the Imjin War, the Battle of Noryang, will see Yi once again leading Joseon and Ming ships against a retreating Japanese fleet. There, he will win his final victory and pay the ultimate price, struck by an enemy bullet in the middle of the fight. His reported last words are simple and fitting for a man who always put duty before self. "Do not let my death be known. Keep beating the war drums. Do not let the troops falter." But the moment that cements his legend, the moment that turns him from a talented admiral into a near-mythic figure, is here at Myeongnyang. On that day in October 1597, he proves something that resonates across centuries, that superior numbers are not destiny. That geography, intelligence, and morale can rewrite what should happen in war. That even in the darkest hour of a nation's story, a single stubborn refusal to surrender can shape its future. In naval history, Yi Sun-sin is often compared to figures like Horatio Nelson or John Paul Jones. He fought in a different time, in different waters, with different technology, but the elements of genius are familiar. An understanding of terrain, or, in this case, seascape. An instinct for where and when to force a battle. A willingness to defy bad orders and accept the consequences. And a deep, almost spiritual bond with his sailors. But there's another dimension to Yi's story. In his diary, he doesn't just list troop movements and ammunition counts. He writes about his fears, his loneliness, his frustration with politics, his sorrow at the suffering of ordinary people. He writes, "On this night the rain pours and the wind howls. My heart is heavy as a mountain, yet my resolve is firm." He is not a flawless, one-dimensional hero carved from stone. He is a man wrestling with duty, pain, and the weight of knowing that if he fails, an entire country might fall with him. At Myeongnyang, he does not just win a naval engagement, he wins time. Time for Joseon to breathe, time for allies to act, time for his people to believe, even briefly, that they are not doomed. The echoes of that decision, to stand and fight with 13 ships in a cursed strait, would shape Korea's memory of itself for centuries. Today, statues of Admiral Yi Sun-sin stand in places like central Seoul, his gaze fixed southward, toward the seas he once defended. School children learn his name. Films and dramas retell his story. The Battle of Myeongnyang remains a symbol of resilience against overwhelming odds. It reminds us that history is not only written by the victors, but sometimes by the very nearly defeated who refuse to go quietly, and that sometimes all it takes to turn the tide of a war is a man who knows how to read the tide of the sea. If you enjoy stories like this, where forgotten straits, unknown diaries, and impossible battles come together to change the fate of nations, consider subscribing. There are countless moments like Myeongnyang hidden in history. Outnumbered fleets, unlikely leaders, and decisions made in a single night that echo for centuries. Stick around and we'll uncover them together.